We've kind of brushed over a couple of questions, but we're kind of on a path that I think everybody's going to be interested in. Is we've obviously spoken about the left hand and your where these extended scale runs or not scale runs, as you put it, and organizing the neck. Where did the hybrid picking come from? Because again, I've messed with that. I can maybe use my middle finger, but you use all of your fingers.
It's a funny thing that, because I do, when I first started to play, once again, being stuck out in the bush where I was and in the mid-'70s, I mean, no internet, rarely seeing anybody on TV, you just sort of stuck with what you get, and what I got was a flat pick. And so I'm trying to play Brognard from the Physical Graffiti album, and I know I think Jimmy Page did use flat pick and fingers technique a lot on acoustic. And I'm trying to play Leo Cockey tunes, and then there was this song by Black Sabbath called Spiral Architect. I think it was the last song on Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and Tony Iommi does the most beautiful acoustic intro. And I worked out the notes, and the only way I could play, I'm sure Tony probably played it thumb and three fingers in classical style. So I'm trying to play it with the flat pick and these other three fingers, and it was every time I got to the little finger, it was a real. Yeah, it was like he took a week to catch up, and I thought, oh man, this is going to be a slog. But I thought, that's learning the guitar, isn't it? You got to just knuckle down and have a go. It didn't occur to me that I was actually building up in terms of the whole. I never called it hybrid picking. I just called it finger picking. Yeah, because I saw the country players do it. They do it all the time, and I never realised that not many people really use this guy, and so I was using it. I studied classical guitar for a little while when I was about 18, and I love the rowl, or whatever they call it, when you arpeggiate a chord rather than strum it or just pluck it straight. And I started doing that a lot in up and down directions. So I developed quite a bit of facility, but I think it was about 88 or 89, and I was at a music store, and a friend of mine gave me to take home and have a lend of the video. It was Frank Gambale's first video. And I took that home and I put it on. And of course, just watching Frank sweeping was like, okay, well now I think I have seen everything. I mean, I was just, you like an alternate reality. But then I've just kept watching it, and I've looked at his left hand. And the first thing I noticed was I'd seen the metal guitarists do the big sweeps, but I was fascinated by how Frank was sweeping 2 and 3 and 4 groups of strings, which I thought would be much harder to do. And then I'm looking at the way he's positioning the notes with his left hand, and I'm like, he's playing actual scale lines. Like he's playing lines across the strings, the way he's changing those intervals. And I thought about it, and I thought, could I do that? And I just picked like a major 7 shape on the top 4 strings, and I could play it back and forth with the pick and fingers. And it was like someone just sort of tapped me on the head with a magic wand and said, you can now do this. Yeah. And I went, oh my God, I've got a whole new thing to explore here. And that was it. I just went down the rabbit hole with it, and I didn't take any of Frank's ideas. I didn't want to steal from Frank. I've already taken the inspiration. That's enough. I don't want to nick your sound or anything like that. So I just started looking at the diagonals, like the major 7 shape. I thought, well, what happens if I flip it? And I tried stretching the intervals out and just experimenting with different permutations of it. And of course, what started were licks. But then gradually, a sort of smaller integrations of that became part of how I actually improvise, to the point now where I don't even really think about it. I mean, when I combined that with the 4 notes per string thing, or the movement that Alan gave me from that thinking, then when I combined Frank's approach of crossing the neck that way, you're traversing the neck, I just felt like there was nowhere I couldn't go. It was, considering it wasn't 2-hand tapping, I thought, without having that access, and when I saw TJ, I saw that possibility. And I thought, well, without that, this gives you a lot of ability to move, and I felt such a beautiful sense of melodic freedom in a way, because I thought if a line felt like it wanted to keep going up, I could do it, or down, and I didn't feel like I was ever stuck in a spot, So So I really try and help people if they complained about the box, and
Yeah.
I say, look, well, there's nothing wrong with the box. It's a handy place to be if you've got ideas you want to make work, or you're reading a chart or something. But I said, if you want to break out of it, then I've got some ideas for you. So
yeah,
try and pass that stuff along.
It really is a phenomenal technique to watch, because it's funny you mentioned Frank. I discovered Frank through Phil Hilborn.
Right.
When we were, I gravitated. As I said, I'm not a very good picker, but I gravitated to sweep picking for some reason, and cascading with the arpeggios, coming backwards and forwards. And Phil was like, "Hey, you should check this guy out." And I started. I'm looking now at Frank's Technique Book 1 and Technique Book 2 on my wall, which are my Bible when it comes to improvising, because he breaks everything down into pentatonics and pentatonic substitution, modes, 3 triads, 4-note arpeggios, intervals.
Phenomenal teacher, isn't he? Like, he's just an incredible teacher.
You look at a chord, and all of a sudden you have all of these other sub categories of melodic choices that you can make. And so it's interesting you mentioned, Frank. I've never been able to get the sweep picking to that point, and I have my own way round. And again, I have to quote you for something that you said in one of your DVD. And I really hope this doesn't sound cheesy. I hope this, these things you said in your instructional stuff really resonated with me, because you said in one video that you reserve the right to play a certain way. That's another line. I can't remember the context you said it in. It was something about, should I play this way, or should I pick it, or should I do this? And you're like, I reserve the right to play the way that I feel I want to play. And that really resonated with me. I can't remember which. I think it was in your DVD you said that. But it was. Yeah,
it might have been. I'd imagine what I was referring to, and it sort of sounds a little bit testy if you sort of think about it. But I think what I probably was saying to reinforce that it's okay to just go with what feels natural, rather than feel compelled. I was having a chat with some guys about this. I think it might have been during the course of the class I did the other day, and I said I feel like musicians have, when they start, we always start with the why. Like, why? Oh no, the how. How do we do this? How do we play these scales? How do we play these chords? How? Because you're looking for ability. You're looking for technique so you can make music. But there seems to be a transition into the why. It's like, why am I doing this? Why am I playing these notes? And some people almost feel like they come right out of the box with the why firmly. They probably become great songwriters, I would imagine, because they'd be like, well, why would I learn to do that when there's a song to be had?
Yes.
And I get that totally. Like, I mean, I just hear people that have very limited facility on an instrument pull the most amazing stuff out of there in terms of composition. And I imagine for them the why is very, very much at the forefront. But for me, the how was a big part of it, because I just wanted information. I wanted to try and learn how to navigate the instrument and manipulate it. But I think because I was left to my devices for so long, it's not like I settled into it and wasn't afraid to challenge myself, but I thought, when I knew I wasn't a natural picker, that's for sure. It wasn't something that came natural. And when I saw people that were amazing at it, my attitude was like, well, that's being taken care of over there. Beauty, good, carry on, fellas. Like, no need for me to get involved in that. Like, I'll carry on in this direction. And I've always sort of tried to think of it in those terms, like, is there something I can add to this? Rather than, that's why with Frank's video, it would have been so easy for me to just go, well, I'm copying this guy. This is brilliant. And it was brilliant. And if I'd copied it, I probably might have been at the forefront of people copying Frank. But trouble is, I ended up on an album with him not long after that.
Yes.
And it would have been the death knell, right? You're on there with the original. It's like, that's why I see people doing the Mike Landau tribute and stuff like that. And I'm like, geez, you better pray you never end up on a gig with him, because it's going to be embarrassing, standing next to the real deal. It's,
Well, saying that though, that thing worked in my favour when I played with Brian, because he said to me, "It really sounds like me when you're playing the harmonies."
But that's the thing, though. See, too, when you with a play like Brian's a great example. I mean, such an iconic sound.
Yeah,
we've all listened to it. And I bet I could probably sound like Brian because it's so ingrained into my soul listening to those songs. I mean,
yes, very much.
He's playing like Jeff Beck's or Richie Blackmore's or any of the greats.
Yeah.
It's part of my being because I've listened to their music so much.
No, I think that's why your playing is so appealing, because it has, I hate to say the wow factor, because that I think that's a slightly childish thing to say. But I admit it, I love to hear a line that goes, "Whoa, yeah, oh," and it grabs you, and you think, where's he going with this? But then, like I said, you'll always end up with a, you can hear the strings resonating, you can hear you bending and catching other strings. It sounds like, something Jimmy Page or Jimi Hendrix or Brian or whoever would play. And I think that's the appealing thing. Sometimes when I get given stuff to listen to, and it sometimes to me, it's like, that's amazing, but I want to hear some oomph, So,
I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and he's in the process of buying a Marshall and going back to his roots of just guitar, amp, raw, and he's right. Like, I mean, I use an Axe Effects a lot of the time now, but that's the sort of sound I pull up on it, is that kind of sound. Yes. Like, because I grew up on Marshalls and Fenders and things like that, so I know what they sound like and what they feel like above all. And you're right, like just that, like I said, that 70s blues rock approach is just something I still love to this day. Like, it's just something about it where there's a simplicity and an honesty to the attack that they have. And I think when I was hearing Scott on the Tribal Tech albums, the later ones, when he started to really go back to his blues roots, and that was really, like, it's very prominent now, but it was starting to become prominent on like the fourth album that had Signal Path and all that sort of stuff on it. And I thought, he's right. Like, you can't lose sight of, because I'd gone to light strings and I was really low action and really pushing the legato thing, and I thought, I want to remember what it was like to want to be Brian Robertson and Paul Kossoff and all those guys. Like, I wanted to go Mick Ralphs and go back to that sound and that feeling, but not lose the other stuff. And it's sort of the same progression that's happened now. Like I have changed a lot. Like my setups for the past quite a few years, I've been using heavier strings, higher action for the slide. And I wanted to have that sort of support for the slide playing. And so, and the hands have gotten older. So, I mean, but I think the brain's changed too. Like, I think it's a mindset, really. I mean, if I've been practicing a fair bit and the chops come back, I mean,
yes,
I could get the speed back and all that sort of stuff, but my brain isn't there. I get halfway through a big, long thing and I'm like, man, come on, why? The why is there again. I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, what are you really saying? You're not saying anything. It's a practice, And so, it's a strange place to be in, really. I suppose maybe that's the lockdown thing too, is like, I've been locked in a room, been very introspective for quite a few years. And when you're taken out of the professional realm and you're left to your own devices, it's I suppose you start to sort of look at yourself and wonder, why? Why am I playing this way? Why not this way? So I want to,
excuse me, I wanted to come back because you started talking a little bit about gear and setup there, but I want to hold that thought and just, and then you mentioned something else which was on my list has gone a little bit out the window, but I kind of like this, that we're, when the conversation flows. You mentioned something else which I have to talk about, and that is your slide playing.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because, listening to, your melodies that you play with the slide, there was again on Uncle Mo's Space Ranch, there was a beautiful track towards the end of that album that had a just most beautiful slide melody in there. There was just, it really is it's just such another side to your playing, and it's such a rich sound when you play slide. And also you do you play it on the middle finger, which is quite unusual.
Yeah, thanks to Joe Walsh, actually.
Oh, okay. And you do this unusual thing. I guess it's to kind of compensate for not using open tunings, where you're able to
angle the thing. Yeah, it's It's because, there was an Australian guitar player, Rick Formosa, who played with Little River Band back in the day, and they had a song called Every Day of My Life, which I just loved. And I saw them on a local rock show here called Countdown, and Rick was playing slide, and he had the chrome one on his finger, and he, of course, he played it beautifully. He's a beautiful player, and I thought, I've got to have some of that. That's fantastic. So I went into the local music shop and bought a chrome slide, and you know, the minute open, like standard tuning, the minute you put that thing on a guitar with any kind of distortion on it, all hell broke loose. It was impossible. I just thought, how do you do this? And so I just sort of put it away. Then I was talking to another guitar player, a friend of mine in town, and he said, no, he said, you got to buy a cheap guitar and tune it to an open E or an open A. He said, like, so you strum it and it's just an open chord. And he said, then you can almost hit anything and you'll still sound okay. And he said, work with that for a while and you'll develop a bit of technique, and then you might be able to go back to your regular guitar. And that's what I did. And I spent a lot of time in open A, but a lot of time in open E. And before I bought that guitar, I saw Joe Walsh playing a fantastic live version of Rocky Mountain Way. It was one where he switched from his regular guitar, put on the slide, played that, took that off and went back to the voice box and finished the song. And I've been looking for the clip, but I can't find it anywhere. But I just saw he had it on his middle finger, and I that sort of stuck with me, and I thought, okay, so that's the finger you put it on. I forgot what finger Rick put it on.
Yeah.
And so when my friend told me about this, that's what I started doing. And when I went back to standard, it did work because I had a lot more facility to mute the strings and control them. So not everything screamed at once. But I really missed that major third, fifth interval between the third and second string. Because it was such a classic riff that Joe would do, where he'd take it up to the fifth and the flat seven, and then descend it down to the third and the fifth, and classic lick. And I remember looking at it with my finger there like this and going, would it work? Honestly, I just went, I thought, bugger me, there it is, So right, is it, there it is. So who would have thunk it? And I expanded on it over the years, of course, and for a long time, people would remark on it, and I never thought much of it. I just thought, I don't know, it's just what I do. And I just figured dobro players probably do it all the time. They probably do. And they just, or lap steel players, they just do it here where no one can really see it, And I was thinking, I was halfway this far away from thinking I might have actually come up with something half original in my entire life. And then when YouTube became a thing in about 2003, a mate of mine posted a clip of Jeff Beck from the band he had with Bobby Tench singing, and they were doing Tonight I'll Be Staying Here With You, and the Governor's doing it. He's playing that. And I went, of course he is. I thought, of course Jeff's doing it first. So, probably did it for 5 minutes and then threw it away and said, I'll move on to something else now. And
so I'd never seen anyone do it. I was like, holy crap. Because
Jeff was, I thought, I never got it from him, but he was doing it first, obviously, way before me. So,
because I tried when we spoke before, I was saying about doing the Australian Pink Floyd show, and that was before I play lap steel now.
Okay, right. Because the David parts.
I have a couple of lap steels that a guy near Chicago built me. I knew nothing about lap steel, but I had a video, a Dream Theater video where Jordan was playing these really cool looking lap steels. I thought every lap steel I looked at when I went into these little obscure music shops as we traveled across America, I was always like, it looks like something that my grandmother's going to knit a jumper on. I want something a bit funny looking. I want something a bit cooler. And I saw Jordan Rudas with this really cool aluminium thing, and I looked this guy up, started talking, and he came down to shows and he custom built me these, and I was like, oh, amazing. Now I've got to play it in front of 10,000 people.
I know, yeah.
Holy shit.
And David Gilmour is one of the most beautiful slide players. I mean, how good is he on that thing? I mean, the thing that I love is going back to the Dark Side of the Moon album and hearing all that beautiful lap steel work all over it, those beautiful textural things he does, and it's almost there, but you don't realize it's there.
Well,
and then when he opens up on the later parts of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, when he just he's way up on that very, very high high G note, way up the top. It's stunning. He's a great slide player.
Yeah, and you've got things like echoes, and also One of These Days as well.
So he was doing it all the way back then.
Yeah, he's doing it all back then. You watch the Pompeii stuff. When I joined the Australian Pink Floyd show, I actually stole a little trick that Guthrie showed me, where I took a cigarette papers and
I've seen Guthrie do that just to bump the action up a bit.
Bump the action up. I used to put it under when I used to come on to do Breathe, and then I was like trying to get some intervals, and I was like, I got that video by Brett, and so I was trying to do all this stuff. So even when I was doing the Pink Floyd show, I was some of it, but it was always a bit hit and miss. So eventually I swapped over to doing it on the lap steel, but then. Like I said, I remember the first gig, the lap steels were set up. The guy who built them was sitting there all proud.
Oh, man.
Proud in this.
You went that cold and did it?
I did it on a gig. I was like, can't be that hard.
Yeah.
And it was honestly.
Oh, cojones, man. Cojones.
I swear to God. Yeah. And we were in the All-State Arena in Chicago. And that was a big gig. I think we had about 18,000 in there. And I was like, how hard can it be? It's just a guitar on it. Stick it in an open tune. What does Gilmore use? I said to my guitar tech, and he's like, either open G or E minor. And E minor, I can't remember. They were very, very close, these two tunings. So stuck it in open G. And I came out, I could see, I was like all proud and, oh my God, where's the note?
Oh, God.
Holding the slide like that. And afterwards,
I mean, you put me on lap steel and you won't want to hear any of it. I mean, it's another world. I mean, I'm comfortable here, but the minute it goes to here, it's
mate,
like,
it was a real trial by fire. And I remember looking at my guitar tech, and he was like, shaking his head at me, and I was like, okay,
oh, it's fantastic.
Can we put that on the bus? You want
me to show you some of that stuff?
I'd love to.
Stuff.
Yeah.
I think you can hear it. You can hear that?
Yeah.
It's good fun. I mean, even to this day, it's not an exact science. But it's really good fun to muck around with. Because I was having, because I wanted. I wanted that interval.
Yeah.
And so from there, the thing Jeff Beck was doing was that's what Jeff was doing.
Yes.
And then I started to try and figure out, I wanted to try and get the fifths in tune. I wanted to get...
Wow.
So I've got that in tune, and then I accidentally hit the middle string, and you get...
No way.
The most beautifully in tune major triad.
No way.
There's a little bit of oscillation there, but without. It's hard. Vibrato is your friend on this one, but when I used to play In My Time of Dying. I used to try and play that. And I had to play it in G because Jimmy does it in open A, I think. And so I would play, but it's not that. It's but it's also in A. So I'd use the Sonny Landreth trick, and you got to have that interval up the top.
Yeah.
Really make it worth it.
And that's amazing there, what you're doing where you're using other fingers as well.
That was Sonny Landreth. Yeah, that's all from Sonny. Like, I think he wears it on his little finger, so he just does the most ridiculous stuff with these guys, like chords, and he's just an absolute genius. Unbelievable. But I guess I've got a little twist to it where I can go either side of it. So I'd come up with just I'd have like a slide. What is it? Like a pedal steel sort of.
That's beautiful.
Sort of angle. So it's a bit rough at the moment, but there's a new one I've been working on which is pretty funny. It's trying to go. So you get the. It's like a 6 chord, so hard to do sitting down, to be honest. It's better if I'm standing. Obviously, you get the and if you want get it like a sharp 9 sort of sound.
That is ridiculous. It's unbelievable. You're so accurate. It's so unbelievably accurate.
It's touch and go, but I'm working on it. So, but it's great fun. You can do it like a B string bender sort of, and they come in handy like just for a little. And if I mute this guy, like you can pull offs and things.
Yeah.
It's tremendous fun. I love slide guitar, and I just love the fact that I could simulate some of the open tuning sounds. I mean, nothing's going to give you a sound like an open tuning other than an open tuning, but I just thought if I can just get just a taste of it in there, it'll keep me happy and sort of and all I've got to do is bring this thing, and I can still play slides, so I don't have to carry a separate guitar. But.
I've actually been talking to the guy who built my lap stills all those years ago, and he said that he's going to retire soon, but he'd like to build me one more, and he's making them now with paddles on the G and the B string, so you can be playing, then you just like these levers, so you can almost do like the pedal steel stuff. So there's a company in Germany that makes the bridges, so I'd like to get one of those, but.
I went to the NAMM show back in I used to go every year when I lived in the States, and I went in, I don't know when it was, like 96, 97, something like that. And I loved going down to the basement floor because that's where all the really radical stuff was, because they were all the really independent people that couldn't afford booths up the top.
Yeah.
And this guy had this thing, and it was like a box that sat on the floor with 3 pedals on it and one of those multi-cables that came up and clipped onto the bridge of a telly.
Yeah.
Telecaster, and you could bend the high E, the G, the top 3 strings.
Yes.
I think you could.
Yeah, I remember seeing it. Yeah,
it was the grooviest thing I'd ever seen. I never saw it again after that. It was quite bulky, so I suppose maybe someone shied away from it. But,
I remember. I'm sure I saw that in a magazine. Some dude with all these like the cables coming down to a foot.
Yeah. It was kind of cool because it was totally retrofit, so you didn't have to trash your guitar to get it done, like a hip shot or something like that. But.
So let's. I've kind of taken a lot of your time this morning or this evening. I'm a little bit lost. We spoke about technique and mindset and stuff and starting out. I'd love to just sort of ask about gear, because for a long time, as you said, like you got into using incredibly light strings. You were using the Steinberger guitars, but with the headstocks.
It's just above the Telecaster on the wall up there. That's it. Yeah, right. Just the bottom of it.
And then you were using. I remember seeing a Musicians Institute video, a fantastic video with you.
That Brian Moore guitar.
That's it. Yeah, that was with Virgil Donati. That's right. Some outrageous playing. So with the wonders of video editing, we're going to attempt to talk about the Telecaster for the 3rd time. We've had.
This time we're doing it. We've
had camera batteries go. We've had cards go.
The telly will have its moment.
Yeah. So we have to talk about your Telecaster. So that's the guitar that I always associated you with. And you say it was an ESP Telecaster originally.
Yeah, I stowed away with the MI teachers in 95 to go to Japan to play for the students of the Japanese MI, because Mr. Shibuya, who owned the American MI, also owned that one, and he also owned ESP guitars. He's not short of $1, Mr. Shibuya. Yes. And he was so wonderful, he took us all to a big store and said, you can all choose a guitar. And we did have a budget, and I was looking at an ESP that looked a lot like the Blue Horizon that I was going to eventually end up with, but I couldn't afford that. And I saw these butterscotch tellies on the wall, and they were all made by Seymour Duncan, I think. And I said, I'd love a telly, because I Bruce Springsteen, Rory Gallagher, I'd always really loved the look of tellies, but they're just brutal simplicity. They look like the sort of guitar you could just Keith Richards, they look like workers' tools. Like they just looked bloody brilliant to me. And it was a texture I didn't have. And so when it turned up in America where I was living at the time, it had an ESP neck on it that was very vintage radius.
Yes.
And I did put another neck on it, but a great luthier named Bill Asher, who was doing a lot of work for me in Santa Monica, great luthier, he had these one chunk rosewood necks coming in for Strats and Tellys. So I got one for the Telly and one for the Strat, same neck. And I do believe they were cut by John Sir, I think John did them while he was still working at Fender. But they were blanks. They didn't have names on them. So I very naughtily put decals on them. But I got into trouble with Fender in Australia back in the early 2000s because I put the picture of the guitar on my website and I call it an ESP Telly. And they contacted me and said, you're not allowed to use that name. That's trademarked by Fender. And I was like, okay, I'll take it off.
Oh, what? Really?
Yeah, they were pretty brutal here about that. They were very militant about it. But they were doing it to everybody. It wasn't just me. So, I mean, it was their business model at the time. I think it came from up high. So
yeah.
And then I was contacted by the guys at a company called CMI in Melbourne who distributed ESP through Australia. And really great people. They were great people there. And they said, I heard about you running with Fender. And I was like, yeah. And they said, well, why don't you just play a real ESP? I said, well, what do you got? What do you got in mind? And as soon as I saw the Horizon, I just went, oh, God, that's beautiful. So I'd love to play that. And they said, well, we'll get you a proper one, don't worry. And they got me that custom shop blue one.
Yes.
It's just, I played that. I played the Telly for probably 10 years exclusively. I'm like that. I find a guitar and I stick with it for decades.
Yeah.
And then the blue guitar I probably played for well over 10 years. And in the Farnham band, I was playing with one of the greatest musicians who I've ever known, Stuart Fraser, a great guitar player. And Stuart, unfortunately, we lost Stuart a couple of years ago to cancer.
Oh, dear.
And, yeah, it's absolute tragedy. One of the greatest guitar players and most wonderful people I'll ever know. And when we did our role in the Farnham band as two guitar players, a lot of times I was on the humbuckers and Stuart would play single coils. He was playing Nags guitars.
Yes.
Like Steve Stevens. Yes. And when Stuart got too ill to keep touring, our intention was we're just going to keep going with just me in the hopes that he can come back and then we'll be ready to go. His amp's going to be there and he just walks on and it never happened, unfortunately. But I decided to keep those textures in the band. I'd go back to playing the Strat, and that's the Strat my mother bought me when I was about 13.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my on that Farnham clip of me shredding all over the joint doing the tapping. That's the red Strat. But
wow.
The only thing original left on it are the volume knobs and the body because everything else has been changed. It's got a Callahan bridge, I think. Callahan, I think.
Right.
And obviously new neck and Virgil Arlo pickups, but I've been playing that thing for at least the past 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And I find that it's like that's my red special. You know what I mean? It's like it's beautiful. And I'm back to the guitar. My mother, I mean, she forked out $650 for that in probably 1975 or 6.
Yes.
And yeah, me and my cousins worked it out the other day. It'd be like buying a custom shop Strat back.
Yeah.
For a widowed farm lady on a farm with not much money. It was a big.
That's a big risk. Yeah.
Big investment.
Yeah.
But I said, I promise you, Mum, I'm not going to quit this. I'm in this for keeps. I said, look, if anything goes wrong, we could sell it for more than we paid for it because it's a Fender and not a cheap copy. And I feel good. I've made good on my promise.
But it's funny you just said that because when I was 13, I went in. My grandfather, my family was from London, but we moved out of London. And I went to stay with my grandparents one weekend. My mum took me down, put me on the coach, and I went up to Victoria Station. My granddad was waiting, so it was on-off. And he took me to Denmark Street. I was 13. I'd never been to Denmark Street. Didn't know what it was. And we were walking around and there was a shop there called Rod Argent's and he took me in and there was this beautiful Yamaha SG that had a locking trem on it. It was called the 1300T. And my granddad was like, oh, that's beautiful. Gold hardware, cream white. And I picked this thing up.
Wow.
And I was playing it. And the shop owner came over, one of the assistants, he said, do you like that? And I was like, yeah. Wow. He said, put it in your case. Your granddad's bought it. And I was like,
oh, God.
Oh, what? And so I got, because I loved Carlos Santana, who played an SG. My dad took me to see
the Yamaha SG.
Yeah, he took me to see Santana in 1979 I was 8 years old, parenting done right. I had a rock dad. And so that was it. I had to have a guitar like that. So I played that guitar for many years. And then when I was in my late teens, I got an Ibanez that I still have. And I was working for Ibanez then. And I was in a band that was doing well, and that all fell apart. But while I was working for Ibanez, the trem on this Yamaha was never very good. And so I got a gold Ibanez Floyd, had that fitted. But the guy who fitted it drilled the locking nut through the headstock, like through the back on the mahogany. Anyway, I didn't know. And it was a call for an audition for Ozzy Osbourne. I was in my early 20s, so I'm doing my Ozzy Osbourne audition tape, and I did it with Phil Hilborn, and I'm practicing the stuff. This is quite embarrassing. And I was signed to my practice one day. Nature called, and I needed the bathroom. And I'm like, I can't stop practicing. So I pulled my little practice amp out, put it on the hallway because no one was home, sat down on the pot, and I'm still practicing guitar. I'm practicing Crazy Train or whatever. And then, you finish, and I put the guitar down, and I knocked the guitar over, and it went over and it hit the edge of the bath or the tile, whatever, and the headstock came off. And so
the headstock came off.
So I had it fixed. No. The guy fixed it. He said it needed a new headstock. It was always coming off. Anyway, long story short, when I left for Sweden, I gave this to my luthier friend and said, it's my granddad's guitar. I'm devastated. And he wrote me last weekend, said, here you go, what do you think on that? Because the neck was so bowed that when you tighten the truss rod, it was just popping the headstock off. So he's surgically cut in maple rods into the back of the neck and the headstock. The thing looks very battle scarred from the back, but I've got my SG is resurrected.
Oh, that's fantastic. That is beautiful, man. What a beautiful story.
Yeah,
my God.
And that guitar now is nearly 40 years old.
Yeah. Well, that would be too. Yeah. It's they tell such stories, these instruments, and they bear the scars of those stories. This thing was in really good condition when I got it.
Yeah.
I did all this to it. It's just been brutalized. This poor guitar, but none of that was there. This is my forearm wore that away, and I love that. Like I love some of my friends here locally, and they were just sort of starting out playing in bands, and they'd never seen a guitar like that before where someone had worn it down.
Yeah. Well,
I was reminded of the Rory Strat.
The Rory Strat is a great example of that. I've got a Music Man on the wall over there that I used on all the Lick Library DVDs that I also played when I was with Brian. I'd go between that and the Red Special. But the back of that was the guitar I was doing the 4 gigs a week with the covers band for 10 years. And the back of that when my belt rubbed, and you look at it and you're like, it's been used. That's
right. Yeah. It's you.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's your imprint on that instrument.
Yeah.
So there's a very reciprocal thing with the way they affect us and we affect them. I love that stuff.
Yeah. So just to very quickly, you've mentioned that you're using was it a Fractal you said? Axe-Effects or a Kemper?
Yeah, Axe-Effects 3, yeah. But like I said, I've just agonised over the modelling of it because the sound of it, because I used to own, I had a beautiful old Marshall 1970 Super Lead when I first started out.
Yeah.
That I used all the way up until the Farnham years. And then in the States, eventually I got a Bogner Ecstasy, and I used that. That's on the DVD and all that sort of stuff. And I had to sell that when we were building our house, unfortunately. So a lot of things had to go just to put a roof over our heads. But those sounds are right there in my brain. So when I dial in stuff on these things, I'm definitely going for that. I'm going for an amp tone.
Yeah.
So it's they're great machines if you sort of know what you're going for.
Have you experimented at all using load box with speaker impulse responses with your Marshall?
Just underneath that book is the X-Load, the Fractal X-Load. And just sitting down here is my friend's big old 1970 Marshall 100 watter.
Yeah.
And or it's mid to late 70s, where they went to the square power and standby switches. And I did an album for a friend of mine named Chris Buck, and used used that amp into the X Load, and then I ran it into an Axifex 2, which I had at the time. I didn't have the 3 then, but
yes.
But then I used the speaker sims in the Axifex. And it allowed me to record day or night without blowing my poor family out of the room. It's compromise. I would have loved to have mic'd a box, but compromises need to be made if you're going to work around the clock. So that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I've used some modelling stuff for years. Like I said, I've recently got the Helix, the rack mount, but I've always when I discovered 2 notes equipment with the load box and the dynamic IRs where you can move the mics and change the mics, and that for me was like, wow.
Because I was using Cab Lab as well, which is another fractal thing where you've got total control over where you position stuff. But look, I'm definitely in the market for an amp. Like, if I'm just waiting to see what's out there, and when I'll ever get a chance to try it with COVID lockdowns and all the rest of it, and all that sort of stuff. But I would love to. I don't own a really nice amp at the moment, but I do. The Fractal's great. I mean, I feel I have a lot of expression with it, and it feels very comfortable to play. Well, I do miss a good good tube amp.
An amp that I use a lot. I use the Mesa Badlander, which is a 2-channel. It's the new rectifier amp, and it has the bold and solid. The bold and variac power stage, so you can get the sponginess. It's got a clean, like a kind of crunch, and then a very high gain on both channels. But the thing about that amp that is amazing is that it's got their Cab Clone IR software built in, which was designed by 2 Notes. So you just unplug the speaker lead, stick an XLR in, go straight into your board, and it's got these beautiful impulse responses of boogie cabs.
It's amazing, isn't it?
And you can have different ones. You could have like an open back tuba 12 on your clean channel, go to your crunch channel, and you can have a 4x12. But the other thing is you've got a USB into it, and you can load different impulse responses. All my filming, I haven't got it set up. It's in my other room, but all my filming in here, I have a boogie cabinet in shot to look like an amp and a cab, but I've got it's just going straight out, and I'm just recording, and it just sounds, and it, you're cleaning.
Well, I mean, if you can dial it in, you remove, minimal movement of the microphone from the equation, don't you? Like, I mean, I heard on your Steve Stevens interview when Steve was talking about, if they have to tear the gear down to put another band on before he goes on with Billy or whatever, and mics get moved and stuff like that. So I think he's using impulse response now, isn't he?
Yeah, I think it's a great marriage of the 2 technologies, because if you're a little bit with the modeling or the profiling or whatever, but then obviously using a real amp. I hate saying real amp because people get a bit weird about that. I just think it's different technology. It's a different approach, but using a valve amp, maybe I should say. But then you've got all the weight and the noise. Another amp that I use a lot, I have a little Mesa mini rectifier, which is like so big. It's got a shoulder bag.
Right.
And then I have a 2 Notes Captor X, which is a load box with the impulse responses in. And the thing is, that's got 2 outputs on it. So if I've got I take my Line 6 HX effects unit, or even a simple chorus pedal, I can actually run one signal dry, and the other signal goes into the other output of the captor, goes into the pedal, and you come out in stereo, and you can do wet, dry, wet, and the rig is like this big.
It's fantastic, yeah.
So, there's a lot of options I find using that stuff, and still...
And a lot of it too with this is just practicality, isn't it? Yeah. Like a lot of times, like when I was touring with Farnham a few years back, we were doing a lot of these summer festivals. And so a lot of times we just walk on. We wouldn't even see the stage until we played the first number, which was "We Will Rock You," if you can believe that. So, but I was using an Axe 8, which was the pedal the floor pedal version of the Axe FX, and it's out of date now. But but it was because they were fly in, fly out gigs. So I'm either flying in with a pedal board, plugging into a rental amp I've never seen before.
Yes.
And I talked to our sound guy, Grant Walsh, and he said, well, you do realise that the 2 stereo wedges I've got in front of you, he said, those monitors are worth $10,000 each. So if you'd like me to give you your sound back through them, you're welcome, And, And that's what, so I just ran stereo out of the Axe 8, and he fed me that back to me. And then what we did is we took the output, the stereo out of the Axe 8 as well, and ran it into 2 rental amps behind me. And I had them on a volume pedal so I could blend them in. So I was just surrounded. It was hysterical fun. It was massive up there. It was like a Van Halen gig up there. It was just a bloody Metallica concert up there. It was awesome.
Excellent stuff.
But yeah, like just the practicality of it, where I thought, well, if I take this, it's going to sound the same every time. And it's going to sound the same for Grant out the front. Whereas if I'm using my pedal board but rental gear, I'll be tweaking all night. I thought, I don't want to get up there and, like I said, the first song we're hitting the ground running, and I haven't got time to be turning around mucking around with stuff. So.
Thank you so much. We have been talking for hours.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Jamie. Obviously, we just can't stop. We'd go for another 3 hours if our batteries at all.
This is just an incredible honour for me. Like I said, I bought Guitar on the Edge in 1993, I think it was. I used to go to this little record store. I've got a collection of them in the CD cabinet over there. And that was when I discovered there was a whole bunch of, you were like the next stage on from the 80s Satch and Vi. And then there was all these new guys. And I know Guthrie was on one, and Ron Thal, and a whole bunch of people like Scott Stein and Derek Taylor and all Scott Mishu and all the players that were just sort of underground and it was
figuring stuff out. It was very fun.
It was like the next generation of guitar music, and that was where I discovered you, and then was kind of hunting stuff down. And it was actually Guthrie who switched me on to the Uncle Mo's Space Ranch album, because we were both teaching at the ACM, and I was talking about you, and I was the Brett's new album with Big Sky, and he went, "Have you heard Uncle Mo's Space Ranch?" I was like, "No," and checked that out. So I ended up ordering a buy, and that was, oh my God, this is for me it's such a privilege to get to spend some time with you and chat, and so thank you so much for coming onto my channel. And, I'm sure everyone's going to really enjoy this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, mate.
Bye.